Okay, shalom everybody. So we'll wait just another minute or two and see who else is joining in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've provided an image in the group, and this level is the second phase. Now, recently here, we had somebody show an excellent photo of the crown jewel on top of the head of the king. I'd like to discuss the second level and give you guys a more proper understanding about these two phases and essentially what it is depicting. So these two levels are called the head, and this, including with the hard spark underneath it, are called three unknowable heads of the Atik. In the 22nd Sefer of the Zohar, there's a section called the three heads of the Atika, and it deals with these three specifically. They're called the skull, the concealed head, and the unknowable head. The first level is called the unknowable head, which is called the Ain. The second one, which is the concealed head or concealed Chokmah, is the restriction, and the third one is the heart spark or the skull. So it's very important that every one of the ilans begin with these three levels in particular. So I'll go ahead and show another image of an ilan depicting it. So at the highest level in the Ain, which is where the crown jewel is representative of, as mentioned inside of Likutei and in various other sources, one should not think that the letters are actually in that place, God forbid, but rather what they should understand about the arrangement is that the essence of the letters or the principles of the letters were in the mystery of a singular unity. And so the crown jewel represents the letters, the Lashon HaKodesh, as represented by a unified singularity, a unified unity. This is significant because the highest level of the light is called Yechidah. Yechidah. And Yechidah contains the word Yichud. And Yichud is spelled Yud, Het, Dalet. It means to unite. I'll type it out there in the chat for everybody. So this highest level is called Yechidah, and it contains the word Yehud. Now Yehud has a numerical value of 22. Yud is 10, Chet is 8, and Dalet is 4. The idea here is that the highest level, which is called Yechidah, contained inside of it all of the 22 letters. And they're inside of a fixed position, meaning that we're not actually dealing with the letters as individual aspects, but rather the letters as one unified thing. And there have been many videos in various places in the depths of Likutei that deal with the crown jewel and its operations. The very first Sefer that was released, Sefer Year 1, actually opened up with the crown jewel, being used. It is, of course, found in Likud in a much, much latter section. Nonetheless, it is there. It's present after the 50 gates. So the general idea here is that the ain doesn't just mean nothingness, that the ain contains the secret of the light, this what we call the simple light, and the endless expanded to the boundary of the endless, and there was no vacancy within inside of it, there was no division within inside of it. But it doesn't mean that there was nothing there. There certainly was something there. That something is represented by God's presence. In God's presence is the secret of the 22 letters. We know this because it's written, he wraps himself in light. And it's also written, Vayera Elohim et haor kitov. It doesn't just say that God saw the light, that it was good. It says, and God saw, and Elohim saw et. The word et isn't translated in English, but it's aleph, tav, an example of the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Thus, we can identify that the light is the same as the 22 letters. So when it says he wrapped himself in light, it really is to be understood as he wrapped himself in 22 letters so that the unknowable may be knowable. Another thing that needs to be understood about this is that or, which equals 207, is the same numerical value as Ein Sof, which also equals 207. And so when it says Vayera Elohim et haor kitov, we can understand this as gazing in the endless. And we can understand that in the endless are the 22 letters. So for this reason, the second level, which is the restriction or the simsum, is called Ein Sof. Ein Sof. One of the meanings of Ein Sof, of course, means endless. But there's another level of the Ein Sof which means near. Ein also can be used to describe nearness. And so Ein Sof could be read as near the end. The term Sof meaning an end. So Ein Sof can be understood as near the end. And that is because when the illimitable one withdrew his presence, withdrew his light, he created a boundary where there was no boundary. The boundary was the extent of the withdrawing of the illimitable light, the endless itself. The endless withdrew itself and from all directions, precisely in the center, creating a vacancy where there was no vacancy. So this language is used to describe the second stage of existence, which we call simsum. And this simsum, or the second head, here as seen, is identified with Chokmah. Now, Chokmah is called Nikud, or point, primordial point. It's called point because the light withdrew itself into a point. Now, there are a couple of secrets behind this. The first, one should know that the vowels of the letters, which are likened to the soul of the letters, are called Nikud. And this is because the restriction are the roots, all these concentric circles, which are these points, are the roots of all of these vowels. And so we know that there are vowels associated with each of the sphirot. And so this can be seen in the top right of the image that's shown. So you should see in Chokmah the circle, the concentric circles surrounding it says Ein Sof, and it also says Adam Kadmon. Now, Adam Kadmon is known as the circular aspect of the Sphirot. Then you should see there's a linear tree in that circle, which has the Nikud, or the vowels, inside of it. Now these Nikud, these vowels, the roots, the soul of these letters, what causes them to allow to be pronounced, etc., are rooted in this initial withdrawing of light. So the arrangement for all of these letters are mentioned in Tikkun HaZohar, and they have attributes to the Sfirot, with Malchus having no Nikud because she is called poor. She's called poor because she has nothing of her own. This comes to include the idea that she doesn't have a Nikud to herself, but all the Spheros above her do have a Nikud. Now the first and highest of the Nikud is Keter, and Keter is called Kametz, and Kametz means closed, closed. And the vowel for Chokmah is called Petach. It means opened. The general idea here is that essentially the eye of existence was closed. And at the withdrawing, Petach, the eye opened. The eye opened. Now these three concealed heads, an example, the Ain, which is identified with the endless, the restriction, and the hard spark, which is the place in which the light withdrew itself, collectively are referred to as the upper eye, the eye of existence. It is like the eye of a fish. The eye of a fish does not have a covering. The Zohar describes this eye. It says the upper eye is likened to the eye of a fish because it has no covering. Our sages say that if the eye of the Holy One, blessed be He, ever ceased for a single moment, all of existence would cease to exist. The general idea is that this upper eye is a figurative language to describe the roots of all the realities. Now, this eye of providence, or this all-seeing eye, which is associated with, in the Zohar, a Richain pin, but that's not what's actually going on here, is formed by essentially three things. We have the surrounding endless, which is like whiteness around the eye. The restriction, the place where the light enters in, where it differentiates itself, which is likened to color in the eye. And the black hard spark placed in the center of a circle, which the Zohar opens up and make an engraving upon the supernal light, how Bereshis A starts after the prologue, and is akin to the pupil of the eye. So there are three essential phases to the beginning of existence: the white of the eye, the color of the eye, and the blackness of the eye. Now these first initial phases are what should be depicted on the top of every illan. And so as you all obtain your scrolls, which there are various forms of obtaining a scroll, these are the first phases you want to begin with. That third level, which is called the hard spark, is also called the Ein Sof Or, the endless light, because the word Or has the same numerical value as Ein Sof. Now this is very important what I'm about to say, because until Likutei, matter had simply not been expounded upon, and no person, no sefer has ever properly expounded this matter. Many people think that all of this... Go ahead, someone had a question?
Witness, thank you.
So many people believe that all of these mysteries are found inside of the Lurianic Kabbalah, and that's simply not the case. The Lurianic Kabbalah is incredibly incomplete. You'd be flabbergasted at the level of incomplete that it is in. It's essentially in shambles. Now, the Arizal did not just teach Chaim Vital. He taught various students different things, and not all of those students surrendered their writings. One of them, of course, that I mention often is Emek HaMelech, the depths of the king, in which, when describing the first gate and describing the nature of the beginning, he speaks about the 231 gates, which were used to create what is called the golem. The golem. Many people have probably heard of the golem, an example, the golem of Prague, which was used and formed and created by Sefer Yetzirah. But what are we actually talking about here? Where does this term golem come from? The term golem is used to describe Adam before he actually came into existence, because the word golem has the same numerical value as the word chokmah. So when the 22 letters descended into the restriction, it took the form and the shape of what we call a linear tree. There are two aspects to the sphirot, that which is circular and that which is linear. That which is circular is rooted ultimately in Adam Kadmon. Those concentrite circles are the secret of the restriction itself. But as the restriction occurred, it created both depth and density in the vacancy. And when the light would pour into this place, it would create what is called the Ora Yashar, or the straight light. This straight light that would enter in is also in the secret of the 22 letters. This is the secret of, in the beginning when Israel arose in thought. The prophet Isaiah hints to this by saying he declared the end from the beginning, which hints to the end of the Torah, or the word Israel. Rashi tells us in basic understanding of the Chumash and the Peshat, he tells us that one should not think that Bereshis means the beginning, because the language is not indicative of that. But rather, Rashi renders it as in the process of the beginning, and cites various inconsistencies to explain his positionings. As an example, Baruch Elohim Merochefet ol pnei chamayim. The Spirit of God vibrated over the water. When was the water created? The answer is, it doesn't explain it. Why? He describes it as things were created before existence, as it is being described in the Torah, and was simply brought forth. Now, this is all very esoteric language to describe the primordial first creation. This first creation is hinted at in the word Israel. For Israel is made out of the words yesh, meaning substance. This substance, yesh, is a word indicative of chokhmah. And so it is written yesh me'ain, something from nothing. Yesh me'ain, something from nothing. And it is also written, wisdom, chokhmah, is found from ain. From ain. Hinting to chokhmah being the second level after ain. This place where this yesh, this substance, takes place. Now this substance, which is called Israel, is Yod Shin Resh Lamed Aleph. Resh Lamed Aleph is 231. 231. This is because when you combine Aleph with every letter and every letter with Aleph, base with every letter with base, exactly as Sefer Yetzirah mentions, it creates 231 possibilities. What is the point of this? The general idea that should be understood about these 231 combinations is that if every letter represents a principality, a principle, and we're talking about creation, then we're talking about every two-letter combination that could possibly exist. That tells us our first state before orders of magnitude afterwards of potentiality. So we shouldn't just say Aleph with every letter with Aleph. You should understand it as the principle of the air with every principle, and every principle with the principle of the air, etc. Thus allowing a spectrum of possibility and potentiality. Thus the heart spark represents complete and total potentiality, because it is every letter with every letter, representing every two combination, every pairing combination. So one should understand that the heart spark represents this primordial potentiality. Now, of course, These are the highest, most esoteric and supernal holy mysteries of God that have never been expounded outside of the group, you whose ears are currently listening to me right now, and the very few who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear the things that have been written, either in Likud or in the videos that have been recently produced. The proofs. Let us enter that level. Essentially, now we have described three stages of existence. Ein, the endless, which is represented by the crown jewel. Aleph separates men from Shin is a perfect example of that. Many of us are relatively familiar with the different aspects of its pairings. The second level, Ein Sof, that being the restriction. And the third level, the hard spark, which is virtually unknown, but it has been revealed to be the 231 gates. Now, why is the 22 letters in this place? Because the light that withdrew contained within it the light of the 22 letters, the principles. We can't just say this. We can't just say, okay, and the endless was the 22 letters of the Hebrew language. Why not Sanskrit? Why not Japanese? Why not Chinese? Right? How do we know? Why not Egyptian? How do we know there's the 22 letters? That this isn't just a philosophical concept. God does not deal with philosophy. The philosophical concepts, it says that the philosophy of the nations are as nothing before him. They know nothing of the upper world and can conceive nothing. That's quite literal. Conceiving nothing means the nothing God, the unmanifested deity, which is essentially what is pervasive across all forms of ideology, is the unmanifested, while denying the manifested. So, our evidence. At the smallest level of existence, which is where the light withdrew itself, which is that hard spark, we should see evidence of this, and indeed we do. We do because there are 22 pairs of chromosomes, with the 23rd being an X or Y genetic factor. There's 22 pairings of chromosomes at the smallest level of existence. We see that in our DNA, 22 chromosomes. Now, this just isn't just 22 chromosomes to the human DNA. There's also 22 aspects to the RNA of the mitochondrial DNA as well. Okay. Not only this, based off of the description that was given, we see that the restriction is circular at the highest level and circular at the lowest level. The general idea here is we should notice that at the highest level of existence, everything is revolving. You need to notice the planets are revolving in concentric circles. And at the lowest level of existence, everything is also revolving. An example, electrons that are revolving, protons, neutrons, etc. So we see at the highest level and lowest level, everything is circular. Now, in between these two, I reveal to you a linear tree called the Or Yashar, the straight light. What is this straight light? It teaches that everything at the highest level is revolving, everything at the lowest level is revolving, and everything in between these 2 points is linear. Linear. Notice we are linear, but we are composite of revolving aspects while simultaneously existing within a larger revolving aspects. Right? So we are linear that are made up of small revolving aspects like the hard spark, and existing on a planet revolving a star like the higher circular aspect of the restriction, while we, being linear, are like the straight light, because it is circular at the smallest level, which we see. We are made out of atoms. At the largest level, we're on a planet spinning around a star. And in between the smallest level and the highest level, everything is linear. Linear. Okay. Now, this comes down all the way to the smallest level. This linear and circular aspect goes down to the smallest level. For our human DNA is linear. But the mitochondrial DNA, which exists inside of us, is circular. The mitochondrial DNA has 22 RNA. the linear human DNA has 22 pairs of chromosomes. Now, this doesn't work if we say it's Egyptian, if we say that it's Chinese, if we say that it's any other language that has any other amounts of letters aside from 22. Only 22 letters gives us this understanding. No other amount. I said in the beginning that these have three heads: the most unconcealable head, the unknowable head, the concealed head, and the skull. The hard spark is called the skull of the Ancient of Days, and it is a composition of 22 letters. Thus, the skull has exactly 22 bones. 22 bones. Now, we don't get this understanding using any other type of understanding, meaning that if one piece of this is changed, what's being shown to you is changed, any little detail, it cannot be improved upon. Anything that is done to it will only take away from it. It must be left in its absolute pure state. But when it is left in its pure state, and when it is treated and approached and scrutinized as the very light of God, you will be rewarded. You will be rewarded by being able to understand and perceive things that only God could reveal to you. Then you will need to have faith or belief, but you will know. And that's called the Da'as of Hashem. So let us continue into better levels of the understanding. So I talked about the light restricting and the Sim and concentric circles, and I talked about the straight light entering in. I talked about depth and density. As the light withdrew, it's called a hard spark. It's hard because the light essentially compounded in on itself, which created that depth and density. When the light poured into the vacancy, it poured in the secret of what's called hard light, meaning that the light put on garments, as it were, began to differentiate itself. What does this come to teach us? It teaches us that light is differentiated by varying degrees of frequency. Because as it entered into this place, this vacancy, these depths were differentiated. And so this light became differentiated. Now, I mentioned the Nikud, the vowels. Vowels are how consonant letters are pronounced. Hebrew language is all consonants, no vowels. You know, vowels like in English, A, E, etc. Those are vowels. But in Hebrew, everything's consonant, meaning that without the vowels, it's not pronounceable. So what does this mean? It teaches us that these vowels, the secret of sound, is also differentiated by varying degrees of frequency, different octaves. The ray of purple light is different from the ray of red light. Now, all of these lights initially poured in through the secret of that endless light, which tells us another secret. That secret is that all of these differentiating lights are to be found in one light. And so we see that when white light is passed through a prism, what do we see? A spectrum. Because that entire spectrum is already existing in one light, white light. So everything that we're seeing is essentially absorbed and refracted light. If you see it to be blue or red or green, it's because we are picking up on what that object is absorbing in the spectrum of the white light and what is reflecting off in the spectrum of the white light. But all of these things are in the secret of white light. Now we know that the endless light poured into the vacancy. And what shape did the restriction take? It's from all directions, which creates a circle. Thus, analyze yourself. Is the light circular? Is sound circular? We know that it restricted in concentric circles all the way to the bottom, creating a vacancy where there's no vacancy. And so what do we find in this? The shape that it takes. If you guys ever seen one of those little toy swords, when they slide out, they're one inside of each other in length, essentially creating that first restriction. In a very
very similar like this, like a conal shape, we find that light emanates in this conal shape. We find that sound emanates in this conal shape. Okay. So these first three levels that we're looking at, we'll go into another level in just a minute, is teaching us some absolutely massive secrets about God, secrets about reality, secrets about how the things here are shaped and why they're like this. Why is light circular and conal? Why is sound circular and conal? Why is light varying degrees of frequency? Why is sound varying degrees of frequency? Why is the eye white, color black? Why is the eye designed to absorb light? So, why is everything revolving at the highest, lowest level circular? Why is everything in between the highest level and the lowest level linear? And indeed, are we linear constructs created out of revolving aspects existing within larger revolving aspects? If you truly take the time to comprehend, everything I'm saying is absurd. The highest levels of absurdity. Who could possibly explain something as absurd as what we're talking about right now? This is insane. But it's written, who makes sense of the ramblings of the sages? So these three levels, I'll reveal one more esoteric level about this matter. Now these three heads are the beginning of the construct of the Ancient of Days. And the Ancient of Days is the you can, like a robot, Gundam. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen that show. I didn't get to watch it much myself, but the concept behind it is essentially you have a pilot in a suit. The pilot is the endless light, and the suit is the Ancient of Days. And what we're talking about is the construction of the head of that suit, the head of the Ancient of Days. These three levels, Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or, are these three heads, are also indicative of the brain, the mind, and the light. Now the highest level, Ein, is the light. The restriction being Chokmah is called the brain. The brain. Or the mind. And the hard spark is called thought. This is the sod of the verse. In the beginning when Israel, remember that substance of 231, arose in thought. Teaching us that that hard spark is really the thought of God. Because it's every potentiality existing simultaneously. It's every letter with every other letter. It's the entire spectrum of the first order of magnitude for any potentiality to exist. It's called the thought of God. So, when the light poured in to the Or Yashar, the straight lights, it did so in the secret of the 22 letters. These 22 letters form man, being a tree of the face and a keter of the tree of the body, or the supernal image, which is identified by the 231 gates. This light that poured in took on the divine form. So we have the tree of the face and the keter of the tree of the body. How does the Atik emanate in the form of a tree of the face and the keter of the tree of the body? So these three levels simultaneously reveal this most hidden aspect. When you guys read the document called the Orders of Emanation, I use three terms. I use the term the Father, the Mother, and then in places the Son. This is derived from a section of the Zohar, which tells us that Abba, Ima, and Ben are the three levels, Chokmah, Bina, and Das, knowledge. But knowledge is really just concealed keter. It's really keter. And so the general idea here behind understanding the order of emanations, is everything that order of emanations is describing
is taking place in these first three phases, which are the beginning of the Ilan. Essentially, because the Simsum, the restriction, was the limit of the mind was limited. And the same thing with thought, which was the heart spark, it too was limited. The mind was limited by the height, the limit of the height. And the thought was limited by the limit of the depth. Neither of these two things could grasp the light when it poured in. For the light, when it poured in, was beyond the limit of the height and the limit of the depth. This is very important to understand later about the kings of Edom, the sparks from the workman's hammer. How exactly did the vessels break? Sages talk about these vessels breaking. This is precisely why they broke. They broke because the light that entered in that place was illimitable. But it garbed and adorned itself in the supernal form of the 22 letters. He wrapped himself in light. And so the mind and the thought could not grasp the root of this light. In the same likeness, we have a mind, and our mind, even though it's completely formed by words, which words are amalgamations of letter combinations, we know not the root of these letters. And so too do we speak and use letters through words to communicate. We do not know the root of these things. This is a direct reflection of this most first supernal order that was described. There'll be a lot more talked about that in the order of emanation, dealing primarily with that light in that supernal form. So I hope that this very initial point that was brought up there gives you access to open up some of these certain things. Now, I'll address that the Aleph separates Mem from Shin, which I described was in the crown jewel, and the crown jewel was in the highest level of the unity, and gave that various reasons as to why it was there. Aleph separates Mem from Shin, you must understand, even though it seems so simple to the intellect. It's very simple. Okay, elements, whatever, what does it mean? Is something so far beyond the grasp of human comprehension. To give you a real level of the understanding, if you go back and view the Ilan, you'll notice right next to the concentric circles, which is the second level called Hokmah Deatik. You guys should see that. To the right-hand side, you'll see the Eitchaim, the tree of life. And you'll see Aleph separates Mem from Shin. Because Aleph separates Mem from Shin is higher than the tree of life, which means that linear tree, that straight light, which all Lurianic Kabbalah talks about, right? The straight sphere, the spheroth when they entered in, was already patternized after Aleph separates Mem from Shin. Which means that Aleph separates Mem from Shin is superior to that light. In fact, it is superior to light in itself. Yellow mixes with red to create orange, and yellow mixes with blue to create green, which means that in order for light to have even differentiated itself, it already did so according to the divine pattern, which was in the illimitable one, in the mystery of the supernal unity, the hand of the unity. Similarly here, Sefer Yetzirah used cryptic language. It says, the Rosh was made from Esh. The head was made from fire. The Hebrew word for head is Rosh. And you should see that right there on the bottom of the tree with the Aleph separation from Shin. It says Rosh de Esh. Rosh from fire. Or head of fire. Because the word fire is found in the Hebrew word for head. This is because the Holy One, blessed be He, encoded this mystery into the word head to signify that the letter Shin is the root of that head. And so the three prongs of the Shin are Keter, Chochmah, and Bina. The base of that Shin is the sphere of Da'as. Aleph, the upper Yud and the lower Yud and the Aleph, is Chesed and Gevura. And the Vav in the middle of the Aleph is Tiferes. Water Mem has two hooks on the top of it, Netzach and Hod. The base of the water Mem, Yisod. And Mem Sophis is Malchus. So you must understand that Aleph separates Mem from Shin was before the spheros themselves, before the tree of life, before Atzilus. It is this reason why I use it and consistently bring things back to this most simple level. Now, everything that I've revealed is an absolute fact when it comes down to the conversation we've had. And today, and just within this small conversation, there's at least 20 of them that have been made known to you. Is everything revolving at the highest and lowest levels? Is it circular? Is everything linear in between? Is light circular, sound circular? Is it conal? Is it separated by degrees of vibration? Are there 22 pairs of chromosomes? Are there 22 in the RNA? Is that circular and linear? So based off of the things, are there 22 bones in the skull? Based off of the things that we've just discussed, you see that this is a royal arcana, a divine science. It is not philosophical at all. There's no philosophy to be found here. There's no guessing. The only thing you're going to find in this place is answers. Answers. And this, for all of you that are involved with the understanding of what is actually happening, are the first revelators or the first potential revelators of the highest light to have ever entered in human existence. You have to fully be aware and wake up to what's actually occurring. What are you actually being exposed to? This is a hallmark in human history. Right now, it's concealed and obscured. Right now, it's like the stages of grief, anger, denial. Many people just deny what they're seeing. Many people become angry at it. Many people try to bargain, reconcile. Because it makes people very uncomfortable to ask the simple question, and that question is, what is the root of this information? Because if you answer the question unbiasedly, devoid of ego, then you'll realize what's really happening here. Those people that are involved with these first levels, to be understanding these ilans, and why I wanted to give this class here, to really let you understand what you're actually dealing with, are the tip of the spear. The beginning of the transformation of this reality forevermore. It is written, they will see what they have never seen before. They'll hear they've never understood before. Will silence kings. And that soon will happen. The king will be returned to his throne. And the true illimitable one, maker of heaven and earth, creator of all things, above and below, will be being known. And he will be one, and all things will be gathered unto him. This is just the beginning. That concept of Aleph separates Mem from Shin is very foundational. It is very simple. It is very basic to the mind, easy to conceive. But should you probe it, should you look in depth, you will find it is like the Techomim, like the abyss. The abyss, its wisdom is like the abyss. I mentioned that Adam was called Golem. Golem has a numerical value of the word Chokmah. Chokmah. It comes to describe the nature of the restriction before there was any light entering into it. These lights are identified by he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, where breath is neshama, the nostrils is ruach, right? The breath of life, and he became a living soul. The living is the chaya, and the soul is nefesh. So all of these lights entered in first. This is talked about in the order of emanation. Well, what can we learn from this initial stage? Because I've described two stages, essentially one where there's the restriction and one when the light pours in. The first stage, when the light is restricted, what color is created when all light is combined together, or what color is created when there's an absence of light? Black, darkness. So the sages said death was descent, because essentially the first phase was likened to a death, meaning that when the light withdrew, it's as if it died. It withdrew and descended, which is why it is called death. What do we learn from this? We learn, and this is what the Eitz Chaim had made mention of, this first level, which is also the secret of the wife of Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon is this circular aspect, as was made known to you. The wife was called Lilith. This was the first wife. What is a wife? Simply a receiver. That's how we understand receiver. Thus, the restriction was to receive something. There's active and passive forces. Active is male, passive is female. The restriction was a passive force, it's withdrawing. So it's written, do not look upon me, for I am black. Thus Lilith is identified as black, because it's the withdrawing of this light. And she was called death, because essentially everything that would be brought forth into this vacancy would be intermingled with death. Therefore she was called a harlot, because everything had a zivug with it, meaning everything brought forth into that place in existence dies. And so if I leave a banana on the counter, what color does it turn as it rots? Black. If my limb dies, let's say my foot dies or my hand dies, what color does it turn? Black. It turns black. This is why. Because we are living inside of a program. This is the Holy One, blessed be He's program. Letters are the code that develop this place. What we're looking at is the blueprint of the architect, the craftsman's work, the design, the great architect. So I'll conclude here. There's a lot to pack in. Thank you, Gila, for recording. And may everyone here carefully study the words that were spoken of here today and play it back, assuming that'll be made available to you all. Gila, if you'd like to publicly upload it, please feel free to do so. But carefully consider, and as you guys go through Likutei, have this understanding in mind of the things that have been made known. And certainly, as you guys make your Ilan, have in mind these different varying stages and understand, to have the proper kavanot, the proper intention. Understand these truths, these divine, holy, supernal secrets of reality as you do so. Hashem willing that with these Ilan, this is why I said in our last call, that if a person does not have an Ilan, they're not fitting to teach Kabbalah. Because you see that it's a system, it's math. It's like trying to explain to someone physics without showing them an equation on the paper. It's like someone trying to talk about a physics equation that the other person can't really grasp or comprehend. There's no vessel for it. There's no whiteboard with the formula written. Very akin to this. Baruch Hashem, Yuri will be here with us, flying from the Netherlands. This will be his second time joining us. And he too is working on an Ilan, which is the reason why this call was a little on short notice. He will be joining us tomorrow. So many blessings to you all. And may you all begin to open your eyes to the wonders of God. And truly in your heart, understand it is not about messengers. It is about the message. One who keeps his eyes on the messenger cannot understand or perceive the message. But if one keeps his eyes on the message, then they will never be led astray by the messenger. So with that being said, many blessings to you all. Shalom and Selah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shalom.
Thank you, Shalom.